Greetings, finders of both paths and stars. Can you believe we've hit a dozen videos here on Driftlanes to Distant Worlds? And we have 2 more after this one. But every world deserves as much time as I can give them, so let's begin our look at the second of 2 gas giants out here in the Galarian system. Yeah, we're getting started right into it today. I don't see a reason to delay very long, and also, to be honest, I need to save some gas for the end of this series. I've written a dozen of these intros already, and it's getting a little hard. So let's get going with Distant Worlds of the Past, Bretheda, the Cradle. Bretheda is the largest planet in the Galarian system and the second of the 2 gas giants. Unlike Liavara, it doesn't have a ring, but it does have dozens of moons orbiting it. Liavara's shepherd moons were small rocks, barely large enough to register, but Bretheda's moons are nearly all fully formed, proper, big round ball moons. That's where the name the Cradle comes from, as astronomers from Galarian can observe the many children spinning around Bretheda, though they have yet to catalog them all. Bretheda actually contrasts Liavara in a lot of ways. The Dreamer was a warm orange color, with relatively gentle winds slowly stirring the clouds across the vast skies. Meanwhile, Bretheda is a deep, cool blue-purple color. The clouds of this world rotate in massive weather bands of slightly different color called jets, separated by density and temperature. Where those bands meet, the winds can blast at hundreds of miles an hour, kicking up powerful and violent storm surges larger than some planets. The weather here is extreme in a way no other planet in the system can possibly experience. And there are 2 ways you can weather that kind of storm. Be so resilient that it breaks around you, or adaptable enough to bend with it. And the creatures of Bretheda have chosen adaptation. Like Liavara, Bretheda doesn't have any solid land, just various layers of gases based on density and temperature. There's a lot more mixing than you find on Liavara, as the more extreme weather churns up powerful up and down drafts in addition to horizontal jets. Superheated gas can collide with floating forests of crystallized frozen ammonia, creating toxic rainstorms the size of continents. This weather also makes the floating plant life you'd find on Liavara unable to grow here unless specifically cultivated and protected. And that brings us to the main species that populates this planet, the Brethedans. Classifying them as a species is tricky because of how adaptable they are. Brethedans maintain extreme control over their bodies and their chemical and cellular functions. Normally resembling oblong jellyfish creatures, Brethedans can configure their bodies into more adaptable configurations depending on what they need at any given time. This can include adapting natural weapons to fight off other aerial predators, protecting themselves from extreme cold or heat of the different layers of the planet, electricity resistance to sail through powerful storms, and even compressing and hardening their skin to allow travel in the vacuum of space. This particular adaptation, along with the domestication of the Oma, is what allowed some of them to travel to Liavara and eventually become the Dreamers. But this adaptability can be taken even further. Brethedans have a unique view of themselves as individuals. Having such precise cellular control, they understand that a body is itself a miniature ecosystem of hundreds of life forms working together. And this idea can be scaled upwards. Each individual Brethedan is simply a disconnected part of a single potential whole. They can function independently, but together they function better, and so Brethedans can combine, mixing their bodies and consciousnesses together to create a new individual, an amalgam of the sum of the parts, but uniquely their own thing. This new creature can, at any point, split back into its component Brethedans, and there's no real limit to how many can combine together in this way. The process essentially forms the backbone of Brethedan society, as individuals pool themselves together in order to solve a problem as a collective before splitting back apart as needed. Kind of like networking together computers, but biologically. Everything about Brethedan technology is biological, since they don't exactly have a lot of metal to work with. When a Brethedan needs to accomplish something, they adapt in whatever way is needed to achieve that goal. This includes using their bodies as living factories to produce compounds or even entire specialized organisms. This makes Brethedans some of the most potent chemical scientists in the system, dwarfing the efforts of all but the most skilled alchemists. The Brethedans make up the largest society on Bretheda, but they are not exactly alone. Wildlife similar to Liavara exists here, including strange and enemy-like creatures that reach up from the deep gas seas in search of prey, and powerful levitating worms that wiggle across the sky. There's also another sentient species on Bretheda. At least in the future they are sentient. It's a little ambiguous if that's true now, but we're gonna assume they are. They're a species of arthropod that float through the skies on silken balloons made up of their own spun webbing. They hunt by capturing flammable gases in their balloons, then using their exoskeletons to ignite that gas with sparks, creating hot flames to burn their prey. We don't know if they have a specific name here in the past, but in the future they'll be called the Han. Life on Bretheda is much more structured than on Liavara, because the Brethedans here are attempting to form a functioning society versus the more instinctual actions of the Dreamers. The ability for Brethedans to travel through space on the Oma opens up the possibility of them visiting other planets, though they actually run into similar problems that other life has when visiting their planet. Though adaptable, the Brethedans have a hard time functioning in a more traditional environment, and their appearance and manners are also so alien that many species they contact would just declare them monsters and start blasting. As such, while they are technically a spacefaring species, the Brethedans mostly remain planet-bound for now. Before we head to the moons, there's a natural phenomena on the planet that requires our attention. The Eyes of the Ancients are 3 massive cyclonic storms that spin on Bretheda's southern hemisphere. These storms are large enough to be visible from Galarian and could swallow the entire planet whole. They have spun for thousands of years with no signs of stopping, which isn't actually that unusual on Bretheda, where weather patterns can persist for centuries. What is unusual is the fact that the 3 always form a triangle. It would be one thing if there were 3 storms all across the planet that you could kind of draw a triangle between, but they are basically touching sides. Cyclones can't really do that in 3s. At least one of them should have countered or merged with the other by now, but they don't. The triangle they form is also equilateral, which has stayed in the same configuration for thousands of years. All of this points to something supernatural going on. To add another interesting wrinkle, because they're visible from Galarian through a telescope, we have a record of when they appeared. Roughly 3,000 years before Aroden died and the Eye of Abendigo formed on Galarian. The dates are a little fuzzy, because we can never be completely sure, but if that has any connection, I don't know what it could mean, but I doubt it's good. Alright, I'm tired of storms, let's check out some moons. Many of them are just rocky and barren spheres that orbit Bretheda, but 5 of them have some interesting things going on. And we'll start with the uninhabited one, Varos. Varos is uninhabited because the environment is incredibly hostile towards life. The entire surface is covered in constantly active volcanoes that spew rivers of magma across the moon. The reason for this is that Varos orbits close enough to Bretheda that the planet's gravity is constantly squeezing the moon as it rotates, creating a phenomena called tidal heating. Think of it like how if you squeeze a ball of putty, the friction of your hand will eventually heat it up. Now imagine it was a moon whose entire rocky surface was grinding together as you were squeezing. The environment is perfect for fire elementals and similar creatures, who have no problem with the intense heat. In fact, many merchants from the Plane of Fire will open portals to Varos, as the unique environment produces rare minerals and gems that a lot of spellcasters find valuable, and there's nowhere else to get them. Now our next moon isn't the most rad, but it's still kind of rad. You might even describe it as rad-ish. It's Daikon! You laughed, you know you did. Daikon is a unique moon, a crystalline silicon-based paradise. Unlike most biological life in the system, which is carbon-based, the creatures of Daikon are silicon-based. The main species that inhabits Daikon are the Urogs, which resemble a combination of a snail and a shrimp made entirely out of crystal. Without the need for more traditional food, the Urogs slowly amble across the rough silicon surface of the moon, passively absorbing electricity from the air. Urogs can connect mentally to one another in a manner similar to the Brethedans, though they maintain their separate consciousness and bodies while they do. This way, their silicon brains can work together to solve highly complex arcane problems and mathematical equations. Whatever they're working on, I'm sure they'll let us know if they find anything important. The moon of Kala Mahoi appears from the outside to be a smooth ice ball, its surface barren and lifeless. This is because the real Kala Mahoi is under the surface, in the cold ocean below the ice. The sea down here brims with life, home to numerous fish species. While the surface is frozen, the inner core of Kala Mahoi is rocky and experiences enough geological activity to produce geothermal vents deep beneath the ocean. Around these vents, the Kalo build their underwater cities. The Kalo are an aquatic species with bluish-green skin that sometimes appears translucent. Though mostly humanoid in body shape, there are 2 things that stick out about the Kalo. The first are their fins, which drape off their arms and connect to their legs, forming a single large membrane that kinda looks like bat wings. The bat comparisons don't stop there. Since the deep oceans of Kala Mahoi don't get a lot of light, the Kalo largely see through the process of echolocation. They do have eyes, though, which are their second most distinct feature. Kalo eyes are bulbous-looking and can move independently of one another. Terrestrial species can find them a little unsettling to look at, though that's rarely an issue as the Kalo only possess gills, meaning they can't spend long times out of water. Our next moon is Murata, which is covered in cool forests and high rocky plateaus. The main species here are the Marikoi, a species that resembles large monkeys. No idea if any of them are a great sage equal to heaven, but they do have one of the most interesting societies in the entire system. The Marikoi are largely hunter-gatherers with a semi-nomadic lifestyle of groups moving between settlements. The various tribes have an intricate web of social connections built as a result of an interesting quirk of Marikoi biology. They have 7 sexes, all of which are involved in Marikoi reproduction in some capacity. Someone tried to explain it to me once, but I went cross-eyed at the 5th chart. Because you need so many people, Marikoi society is by nature polyamorous and communal, with most conflict on the moon being easily settled by telling one side that if they keep this up, the ant they really love isn't going to bake that cake they like anymore, and they really should knock it off. The last of Bretheda's moons is Thrist, and it's highly radioactive. Like, melt your skin off as soon as you land radioactive. The life native to this world has adapted to the environment enough to survive, but anyone visiting needs extensive protection or else they are going to have a very bad time very quickly. There is evidence of some kind of humanoid life here, but no one has made extensive contact with them. The little we know speaks of people with flat, nearly angular bodies that reflect all light away from them. No one even knows if that's their natural form or some kind of armored technology to protect them from the radiation. Whatever it is, looks pretty dang creepy. And that's how Bretheda looks in Pathfinder's time. Just like Liavara, the moons serve as a nice, self-contained alien environment, but the planet's a lot more difficult to access in exchange for having some really strange sci-fi vibes. There's a lot of really unique species and some completely alien things to come across. The closest comparison, other than obviously Liavara, would be the Contemplatives of Ashok back on Akaton, but even they had a fairly recognizable society, just a highly min-maxed one. The Brethedans are capital W weird, and throwing one into an adventure out of nowhere can be a huge shock to a party. In the future, though, things are only going to get weirder. Driftlane's the future. Bretheda, the Cradle.
Greetings, friends. It is I, Barathu Dave. I am here to tell you about my wonderful planet, Bretheda. It is full of gas, which I, Barathu Dave, use to breathe and synthesize compounds. Many of you call these compounds drugs, but I call them drugs. Would anyone like to fuse and try some? It's only weird if you make it weird. I, Barathu Dave, have brought enough for every— Hey, you get out of here. Get on, go. Get back to the ship. I told you, I'm filming. Sorry about that, everyone. That's just a guy I know. Anyway, welcome to the future and the planet Bretheda. The Brethedans are now properly called the Barathu, as Dave just showed you, and have joined the Pact Worlds as one of the stronger political powers. It's the only planet to hold complete protectorate power over another, and until recently it also held that position over its many inhabited moons. Now that those moons have gained full Pact World status, if you combine them with Liavara's moons, it could be argued that the Brethedan bloc represents a powerful group of votes in the Pact Council. Of course, that's only if all 6 members vote with each other, and that's actually not guaranteed, since the various moons did lobby to be allowed to vote independently of Bretheda for this very reason. They're not just going to go along with their former protectorate unless it very much suits their interests. Another factor against this is that the Barathu power structure has little interest in subordinating their neighbors. Heck, for all we know, they supported the moon's bid for independence. Looking at how the planets changed, the Barathu have a lot more solid surfaces than they did before, as stations and arcologies have been set up to monitor and study the world's weather patterns and deal with the various biochemical suppliers that operate on the planet. If you need a chemical synthesized, the Barathu of Bretheda are able to make it. If they can't, it either doesn't exist or is so rare and difficult that no one bothers. The Barathu have embraced space travel with gusto, venturing out into the system to find out everything they can about the universe. Younger Barathu are often seen traveling, doing everything they can to experience the sights and sounds of the worlds around them. Barathu see experiencing other societies as just another version of their merging with one another. All are part of the universal collective, even if we can't interface the exact same way. My heart doesn't touch my bones, but both are part of the same body, right? Same basic principle. As Barathu get older and theoretically wiser, they often yearn to return home and merge with others of their kind, to share their experience and bring the hard-won wisdom back to the collective. You can still find merged Barathu off-world, but they are rarer and often serving a specific role or doing a specific job. The most common time you'll see them is when encountering agents of the Barathu government, the Confluence. The Confluence is a gigantic fusion of all the Barathu that feel called to enter public service. They congregate near the northern poles of the planet, both because the poles are the calmest areas of the atmosphere and because it's close to the planet's largest city. The Confluence exists more for the benefit of off-worlders, as the Barathu are content to just float and let float as they have in ages past. However, outsiders can't simply merge with Harold, Latoya, and Kimiko to network a solution to their issues. So to keep things civil and organized, the Confluence was created. Agents of the Confluence are detached from the conglomerate to act as independents. Interestingly, the agents detached in this manner are still connected to the whole, possibly via some kind of psychic quantum entanglement. While capable of acting as individuals, the Confluence agents can relay messages back to the whole immediately, without the longer delays that would come from regular interstellar communication. Drifting near the Confluence is the largest city on the planet. Most of the cities on Bretheda are floating arcologies, self-contained inside large structures. Trilidium is the largest of these arcologies and the most metropolitan city on Bretheda. The entire location is built out of transparent aluminum dome bubbles, which can be attached and detached from one another using several tubes made of the same material. This construction mirrors the Barathu's ability to connect and merge with one another.
This has allowed the city to expand rapidly, which only just barely stays ahead of its population, as many are drawn to one of the most progressive cities in the Pact Worlds. Things aren't perfect, though, as the Barathus lacks law enforcement for anything other than violent crime, means that many of the people coming to Trillium for new opportunities end up exploited by greedy corporations. Many of the corporations on the planet are made up of merged Barathu, whose conglomerated forms fill the entire corporate suite of the company. You'd think, being generally communal by nature, Barathu corporations wouldn't be that bad to work for. However, one of the many things they've absorbed from the outside world is cutthroat business tactics. Most of these corporations focus on biotechnology, which is Bretheda's leading export. The Swiss Salus Academy is where the next generation are trained, accepting students from all over the Pact Worlds who compete for the limited admission slots. There has been some controversy about admittance of merged Barathu who separate into individual students once enrolled, which isn't cool. Come on guys, none of you are even technically the creature that took those tests. But the kind of students willing to use their species' natural abilities to cheat the system like that are the ones welcome at the Sopeth Corporation. The Barathu working here are isolationists, believing that the planet's advanced research is meant to benefit themselves first and foremost. The Sopeth corporate entity takes advantage of their Barathu nature to prevent corporate espionage, as any other Barathu that joins attempting to learn their secrets find themselves unable to detach from the group. Non-Barathu are treated much less, well. Let's just say their bodies get donated to science non-voluntarily. Contrasting Sopeth is the arcology of Silversail, located near the south pole of the planet. The entire city is powered by wind turbines that constantly turn in the milder breeze of the southern extremity. The main manufacturer of Silversail is Life Innovations, which has a larger than average number of off-world connections. So I guess if you kind of put them together, they average out to like a single normal corporation. Eh? Yeah, I'm not happy about it either. Now, not every arcology on the planet is a newly built bubble city of technological innovation. Ebethruia is entirely organic in nature, having been built before the Gap. Conventional starships can't even land here, because their engines would literally harm the platforms they're supposed to land on. Because of its organic construction, though, Barathu can directly merge with the settlement, adding onto its functions with their own bodies. This also means they can do the opposite, simply detaching and floating away when their business is concluded. Ebethruia also contains one of the few Pact World temples to Oros, the deity of change. A being that is popular enough to be notable, but not the most widely worshipped of the core pantheon. The Barathu's interconnected nature does sometimes work against them, and the consequences of that can be seen in Laue Array. Translating to Lonely Dream in the Barathu language, Laue Array is a hospice filled with infected Barathu who've recently been exposed to a new strain of a common fungal infection. Originally, this was the Barathu equivalent of a cold and easily defeated via their cellular adaptation abilities. However, this new form is much stronger, attacking the nervous system and fighting against adaptations with its own ability to evolve. The infection spreads through Barathu merging, meaning any infected Barathu that connects to another will spread it around. The goal of Laue Array is to both care for the infected and research a cure to prevent the spread of the fungus. Signs point to this disease being genetically engineered, which raises a lot of questions about who knows enough about Barathu biology to engineer something this precise and why they would want to do this. Now, Bretheda isn't just known for its bioengineering, it's also known for its extreme weather. And as with anything extreme, there are thrill seekers ready to make their name by doing something with it. The Bicene Run is an area of the sky where the stormy equator meets with the counterband, a section of the clouds that spin counter to the rest of the northern hemisphere. The different systems create powerful updrafts and downswells that can shear a ship apart in seconds, while charged cloud banks arc lightning between one another at random, creating a danger for any kind of conductive material, like, for example, the hull of a ship. Originally, the Bicene Run was just a location that daring pilots tried to fly through to prove their mettle. But then someone thought to show it off, and that's where Zoe got involved. Now hundreds of contenders line up to win his contest for the best pilot to make the run. Don't worry about those that didn't win. I'm sure they definitely got like a novelty t-shirt and not a coffin. Speaking of extreme weather systems, the Eyes of the Ancients still remain, spinning across the southern hemisphere. With Galarian gone, we'll never find out if there was a connection to the Eye of Bendigo or not. Given their size and ferocity, no one lives near the storm systems, though many scientists study them to learn as much as they can. That study has resulted in some people noticing a strange signal coming from the calm spot between the three storms. As with anything lacking in information, rumors about what this could be have spread far and wide, most assuming it's gotta be some kind of treasure inside an abandoned station. However, we've recently started getting some answers, as something has begun to emerge from deep inside the layers of the planet. What made it start emerging is unclear, but many point to some kind of foul rituals beginning to draw it out. A solid rock, resembling one of the many moons that orbit Bretheda. Ruarde is its name, but none dare speak it, for even that is cursed. Some parties have attempted to land on the Demon Moon, but none have ever returned. The stewards and the Knights of Golarion have blockaded the demon moon, but its name has leaked into the system, its utterance a harbinger of chaos wherever it's heard. I'm not entirely sure how connected this is to recent galactic events, but none of that lines up well, and I don't like it. Speaking of moons, I've been using speaking of a lot, but listen, I'm really running thin on transitions. I'm working with what I got here. Most of the moons remain empty or else occupied only by science and mining outposts. There are a few more worth noting now that people are traveling between them more often. For example, in the past, the moon of Chamai would have been ignored. It's a barren rock with nothing on it. But that was before people were aware of the god Ibra, the Inscrutable. An outer god of cosmic alignment, Chamai actually holds one of the oldest temples to Ibra in the Pact Worlds, built around a set of stone monoliths that look like the star pattern of the god's holy symbol when seen from above. The temple's uniqueness has brought a lot of traffic, which actually annoys the people working there, who need clear skies unpolluted by light of ships to conduct their astronomical studies, so please leave now, thank you. It's not the only religious site on one of Bretheda's moons. Yashu Indiri is a memorial for the forgotten. Mystics from across the galaxy have come here to build shrines and memorials to the gods who've faded with time, died, or been lost. Several gods from Galarion's past are here, including Caden Kalian and Norgorber, two of the Ascended Starstone gods, as well as Torag, the missing head of the Dwarven Pantheon. It's important to remember that not every god with less prominence is dead or missing. Asmodeus isn't part of the Starfinder core pantheon, but he's still around ruling Hell. He's just not focused on this area of space and has fewer worshippers as a result. And there's always a chance that a god long forgotten could come back to prominence. Someone should contact whoever maintains Shellen's part here with some updates. Our final new moon is Daxus, and checking my notes here, this is actually a completely new moon. As in, pre-gap records don't show it existing at all, it only appeared after the gap. The mystery deepens with what's on it, as while most of the moon is just barren rock, a small patch is covered in ice and snow that seems to be home to a colossal blue worm creature. One that matches up with pre-gap records of a great beast that lived on Galarion's moon. That's right, you thought that aside about Yarthun the Moon Grub way back in the first video was just a random bit of trivia, but no! It was foreshadowing. I'm a genius. I am so many steps ahead of even myself. Yeah. No one's done a deeper survey on Daxus for fear of waking up the moonworm, so we don't know what else is on there. But I wonder if we look closer, could we find that Galarion's moon survived the loss of its planet by finding a new home? Time will tell. Let's go over the returning moons in the same order we did last time, because Varos still doesn't have much going on. It's still Bretheda's little stress ball, full of volcanic activity and lava all over the place. However, industry has a much greater demand for the rare gems the moon produces. Meanwhile, Bretheda has an issue. It avoids capital punishment unless absolutely necessary, preferring to sentence its worst criminals to long stretches of hard labor. But where to put them? Oh yeah, the moons! Various moons have camps like this, known among the inmates as death moons because of the conditions, and Station 4 on Varus is one of the worst ones. Most of the prisoners here are androids or robots, since organic life simply won't survive the conditions, and if you sentence them to somewhere they're guaranteed to die immediately, that is technically kind of capital punishment, as opposed to the implied capital punishment of long-term prisonerhood. As with any prison labor camp, there are a lot of questions about legality and ethics of these working conditions, made even worse by the mechanical nature of its inhabitants, whose long lives mean they could serve out a sentence indefinitely. I hope those rumors about some recent uprisings start panning out. The moon of Daikon is now home to many academies and schools focused on mathematics and related magical fields. While many find the Urogs to be abrasive in their confidence regarding these, they have earned the place at the top when it comes to understanding esoteric math. The universities in Icanus, the moon's largest spaceport, have most recently focused on understanding the mathematical principles behind the space between spaces. These experiments have produced several interesting results, especially as relates to the drift. As a quick note, the drift will pull chunks of other planes into itself whenever a drift engine activates, as part of the transition process. Scholars here have managed to pull some of those chunks back out into the universe, which could have long-reaching implications, or undermine the entire fabric of interstellar travel as we know it. Either one, kinda 50-50, flip that coin. Kalo-Mahoy is one of the biggest winners in the shift from paths to stars. We know a lot more about the history of the Kalo than we did in the past. I'm not sure of the exact timeline here, which is why I'm going over this information now when it's confirmed to be ancient history, rather than back in the past when it maybe could have been happening, just to avoid confusion. The Kalo divide their history into 3 ages. The Wild Age is prehistory, when the Kalo swam the oceans of their moon and divided into various hunter-gatherer tribes. General civilization stuff happened at this time, and if I had to guess, I'd say this is probably what was happening during Pathfinder's time, but I could be wrong. Then came the Age of the Worm. All across Kala Mahoy, there are natural portals into the first world called blooms, which look like a shimmer in the water, kind of like an oil slick somehow hanging suspended in the liquid. From these portals emerge the Linorms, creatures that resemble dragons at first glance but have a few key differences. They don't have hind legs, and more importantly, possess a powerful death curse that afflicts any who dares try to kill them. These great creatures claim the oceans as their own playground, ruling over the Kalo as ruthless despots. Those that didn't fall in line were forced deep into the darkest parts of the world. But the Kalo would not be cowed so easily. Tribes that were once mortal enemies put aside their differences and rose up to defeat these oppressive invaders. The Deep Current Alliance managed to win back their home world city by city, the Linorm rulers too divided and selfish to properly work together. All were killed or driven back into the First World. The rumors persist to this day of ancient Linorms who've lurked in the obscure ice caves of the surface, stewing in resentment. Their victory won, the Kalo strove for more. Never again would they be the divided people so easily picked off. Small settlements grew into great cities, and the Bright Age began. And it would immediately experience a shake-up, as the Blooms produced another visitor to Kala Mahoy. Not the returning Linorms, or even another Fae at all, but instead a group of Anacites from Abalon came out, having entered from one of their planet's ice wells. This connection between the two worlds would spark an era of exploration, as Kalo set out into the First World to traverse between the stars. Now this wasn't easy, as Kalo are an aquatic species. They don't have lungs and need to remain immersed in water to properly function. Magic was used at first, with technology supplementing it soon after as trade brought new innovations to Kalo society. The largest benefit of these trade routes would come after the gap ended, when drift travel was given to the universe. The Kalo were already used to traveling between worlds and making connections. They just needed to swap the engines on their ships, and they were ready to fly. Kala Mahoy being almost entirely aquatic does not stop people from wanting to visit, and many cities have bubble districts for landwalkers and air breathers to feel at home, which often offer services to let customers experience the true breadth of their world's offerings. That kind of commercialism can be found throughout a lot of Kalo culture. Being aquatic means they don't have the same need for imports that other cultures do, and that what they can export is also somewhat limited. Practical goods for living underwater are a niche market. But you know what has a lot more universal appeal? Art. The city of Grand Inza is one of the Pact World's largest art scenes, with fashion and cuisine being its biggest business leaders. The Kalo's lower industrial needs and deeper connection to the primal magic present in the Blooms means that Kala Mahoy is much more pristine than other cosmopolitan worlds. Pollution is strictly regulated and natural spaces are preserved for future generations. Some Kalo use these to embrace a more traditionalist lifestyle, arguing that allowing so many outsiders into their world is polluting their waters in other ways. This is a very fringe view, as most Kalo consider the division the bubble cities provide to be adequate protection. And now that they are a full voting member of the Absalom Pact, the Kalo are positioned better than ever to show the universe what they're made of and to welcome in anyone that wants to buy in at proper markup value. That was a lot of words about the Kalo, so let's check in on the Marikoi now. Changes have been much slower coming to the tribes of Murata. Many traditional isolationists want to cut the moon off from the Pact worlds entirely, fearing that the rest of the universe will disrupt the delicate balance their society exists in. More progressives would rather open their world to greater opportunities that being a member of the Pact worlds offers. As we can see from the recent news, they did eventually win, and Murata is now a full member of the Pact worlds. Marikoi traditionalists and Hakoya are still trying to claw their world back into obscurity, trying everything from protests to organizing what can only be called a sex strike. Marikoi reproduction uses all 7 of the species' sexes, and even one making an organized effort can cause quite a few issues. The current focus is on the Zaisha, the sex that participates more psychically than physically, to withhold participation. This has not gotten much traction, as the isolationists are still fringe. However, even the more progressive Marikoi are concerned with the corporate interest in the forest of Steth Zenith. The unique flora within were recently found to have remarkable healing properties found nowhere else in the system, and now pharmaceutical interests from across the system are bearing down, ready to come in and take as much as they can get away with, and probably a little bit more on the side. That's kind of the thing with a more open system. There's a lot of good that can come from sharing cultures and ideas, but you also have to deal with the possibility that someone from outside your world is going to bring a problem you didn't sign up for. Corporate interest in Murata, new influences on the Barathu Collective, or in the case of Thrist, an entire settlement of undead attempting to break away from Eox. There is still little to no information about the natives of this radioactive moon, but all eyes are currently on the small settlement of Farain, where a group of Elybrians have declared independence from Eox. They are currently petitioning the Pact worlds to be granted member status, which given their small relative size seems a little premature. They'd likely be a Brethedan protectorate first if anything. However, Eox insists that this is a group of fugitives wanted for unspeakable crimes that should be taken back to their planet immediately. Adding fuel to this fire, conspiracy theorists believe that Forain is an elaborate double bluff, being a group of corpse fleet plants working for the Eoxian government with the intent of getting another cold body on the Pact Council for some sinister purpose. What that would be, I haven't a clue, but conspiracy trades as much on making no logical sense as it does making any sense. For now, the Pact Council is taking a wait-and-see approach, since Eox isn't willing to go to war over this just yet. And with that, I think we're done. Bretheda had a lot of stuff, and much of it incredibly varied. I hope I didn't forget anything. Let me just check my notes here. Oh right, the Han, those bugs that lived in the atmosphere. Yeah, they're still around too, many living their traditional floating around lifestyle, but an increasing number actually venturing onto the arcologies of Bretheda and out into the wider world. They don't have a set homeland the way a species might on somewhere like Castrovel, but they do have an area of the sky they traditionally nest in. Han eggs aren't dropped deeper into the clouds like most species, instead left to float on webbing balloons, so maintaining security for the area is paramount to their species. But that's really all we've got for now. And now that's everything. Whew, glad to get through that. You know, I was worried I was going to slip up and call it Planet Bethesda at least once. Crap. Ah well, I ended on bugs, so it's kind of appropriate. Bretheda is dense with cultures, all carving out their own niche both as part of the greater planetary system and the Pact world as a whole. They are both changing the system and being changed by it. In fact, the Barathu government recently had a massive shakeup, as the membership of 3 moons formerly under its governance into the Pact has prompted some to wonder if Confluence is leaving the planet stuck in the past. A large number of the Barathu that make up the Confluence have simply left, and while it still leads, there are some asking if we need a new system for new times, especially as the system changes quite a bit around Bretheda. Thank you so much for watching this whole video, Finders. Did you have a favorite moon for Bretheda? Researching this really got me interested in Kalomahoy, but I think Murata is still my favorite just for the societal implications that come with Marikoi biology. Let me know down in the comments what your favorite part was, do all that YouTube stuff, and check out the socials and the Patreon. We only have 2 videos left, and I promise we are ending with a bang. Until next time, keep your eyes on the stars, and explore, report, and cooperate.